Normally, I like to start my videos with some charming anecdote about my life, or a witty metaphor that neatly segues into the topic of my video, but today's topic doesn't deserve that kind of verbal lubrication, so pucker up because I'm going in hard and fast on this one. The new Star Trek movies fucking suck. All three of them. And don't even get me started on Discovery. They suck to varying degrees and for various reasons, but without exception, they're all utterly mindless, dull, creatively bankrupt disasters that have almost nothing to do with the original franchise beyond the title and character names they work so hard to sponge off. And the crown jewel in this shit-covered monument to mediocrity has to be Star Trek Into Darkness. Why? Because it takes the very best and most revered movie of the entire Star Trek franchise, bends it over a table, and has its way with it to such a horrific degree that the original needed to be booked into a fancy London clinic for major reconstructive surgery. Remember Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Remember when Star Trek films actually dealt with mature themes and characters in a clever, thought-provoking manner? Remember when space battles had some weight and strategy and significance behind them? Remember when James Kirk didn't sprint around everywhere like a clueless asshole? God, I hate movies today. Into Darkness is the very epitome of everything wrong with modern filmmaking, especially the tactic of endlessly remaking and rebooting movies that already hit the mark decades earlier, movies that did a lot more with a lot less, movies written by people who actually had some skill and creativity and passion for what they did, unlike the soulless wannabe intellectual assholes we're stuck with now. Anyway, it's only a matter of time before my liver packs in, so let's get this shit show on the road. I'm gonna break this plot down for you, and I'm talking break. Into Darkness begins with Kirk and McCoy having a wacky adventure on a planet that's about to get blown up by a giant volcano. And because this is new Trek, everyone's running around and screaming, and there's a million different things all happening at once, because we can't have the audience slow down even for a second and actually think about the nonsense they're seeing. Just keep bombarding them with frantic madcap bullshit and hope they don't notice. Anyway, they do some science stuff. What the fuck is a cold fusion device? And Kirk saves the planet, but then Pike finds out about it and he's mad because Kirk risked his ship and crew to violate the Prime Directive. He decides that Kirk's too reckless and arrogant to be captain of the Enterprise, so he strips him of his rank and sends him back to Starfleet Academy like a complete chump. Wow, this is quite the setback. I'm sure this major change of command structure will have big, long-lasting implications for the story going forward. Clear the room! Oh, never mind. You know, it's interesting that New Trek portrays James Kirk as some dumb, reckless, devil-may-care hotshot who takes insane risks for the sake of personal glory and flat-out ignores the rules whenever it suits him. Original Kirk was never like that. He was a smart, capable and compassionate leader who considered his options carefully before acting. He respected the chain of command and only disobeyed orders when there was no alternative. Yeah, he was kind of a ladies' man in his younger days, but his first priority was always the safety of his ship and crew. He took risks when he had to, but they were always calculated ones. Now he's played like a goofy, hyperactive child, always running everywhere, getting into bar fights, trying to provoke people that he should be working with, lashing out because he can't control his emotions, and antagonizing superior officers because he can't handle authority. Even the Kobayashi Maru test, which gave us one of the best insights into original Kirk's personality, his refusal to accept defeat and his ability to think outside the box, was played for laughs in the new Trek. See, it's funny because he's eating an apple like he doesn't give a shit. I mean, he couldn't possibly make it more obvious that he was cheating in the simulator. Fuck off, film. And that pretty much sums up New Trek's entire approach to storytelling. Clever, thoughtful and patient character development has been replaced by goofy action and slapstick humour that lands about as well as a retarded horse on a greased up water slide. Anyway, I digress. So we flash over to London, where Doctor Strange shows up and bribes a security guard to blow up a secret Starfleet research facility in exchange for curing his terminally ill daughter of whatever's wrong with her. What could be going on here, I wonder? Then we meet RoboCop, who's given up on busting criminals criminals in Detroit and become an admiral in Starfleet. He convenes a big meeting at Starfleet headquarters, and for some reason Kirk gets invited along, even though he got demoted and he's totally not worthy of being at a top-level classified briefing like this. Whatever. So we learn that the man responsible for the London bombing is John Harrison. He's a former Starfleet officer that's gone rogue and turned into a terrorist for no apparent reason. What an absolute heel! The men in the briefing room are the captains of all the starships in the region, and their mission is to hunt Harrison down and kill the shit out of him. Robocop explains that they haven't detected any warp signatures leaving the system, which means Harrison's probably still on Earth. Wait, what? No warp signatures, eh? On the central planet of the entire Federation? Wouldn't there be ships coming and going literally every hour of every day? And even if that's true, and he is still on this planet, why do you need starship captains to hunt down a single fugitive? I mean, isn't that a job for the police force or something? That would be like deploying the US Navy to track down a serial killer. Anyway, those are questions for a movie that actually gives a shit about logic and plot development. The point of this scene is to get everyone together so that Doctor Strange can show up and kill some of them, including Pike. Robocop gets mad about this, so he reinstates Kirk as captain and sends him off to kill Doctor Strange. Wait, what was the actual point in any of this? So Kirk got demoted at the start of the movie, only to be reinstated like 15 minutes later as if nothing happened. Why? Doesn't this render the first 15 minutes a completely useless waste of time? Wow, sure hope this movie doesn't make a habit of introducing major events with permanent implications only to totally undo them minutes later. But Drinker, you wildly intoxicated yet strikingly sophisticated raconteur, I hear you say. Kirk's demotion was a way of setting up a character flaw for him to overcome at the climax of the movie. It establishes him as a selfish, overconfident man, used to playing fast and loose with his responsibilities as captain. He's content to take crazy risks because he assumes everything will work out. Well, contrived argument. That character arc might have worked if the movie actually forced New Kirk to see the human cost of the risks he takes and become a more mature and responsible commander as a result. And what do we get instead? Remember in Wrath of Khan when original Kirk visits sickbay after the first battle and sees all those young men lying injured and dying because of his screw-up? Remember how the suffering of his crew forced him to face up to past mistakes and acknowledge his own failings, ultimately emerging as a stronger and more determined man as a result? Yeah, well, forget about that. Because that movie actually understood character motivations and the arcs they need to go through in order to grow and change. On the other hand, Into Darkness understands how to stage an action scene and make stuff explode, and that's pretty much it. Anyway, Doctor Strange is teleported halfway across the galaxy to the Klingon homeworld of Kronos, because transwarp beaming is totally a thing now apparently, so Robocop gives Kirk a bunch of experimental new torpedoes and orders him to blow Strange up, because, you know, normal torpedoes aren't powerful enough to kill one man, I guess. But then Shaun of the Dead gets angry about these new torpedoes because he doesn't trust them or something. Why does an engineer even have a say in weapons design? Isn't it his job to manage the engine room and that's it? Whatever. So he leaves and some chump named Carol Marcus is left in charge of the torpedoes. Remember Carol Marcus from Wrath of Khan? Remember how she was a peace-loving scientist and an old flame of Kirk's who resented the militarized Starfleet, interfering with her potentially galaxy-changing project to terraform uninhabitable planets? Yeah, well, forget about her, because now she's a hot young weapons designer that's never met Kirk before and has no personal connection to him or even a reason for being involved in this. Fuck off, film. So they get to Kronos and oh no, the Enterprise warp drives breaks down. Where's Shaun of the Dead when you need him? Oh yeah, they had to separate him from the others so he could pull a Deus Ex Engineera out of his arse later. Anyway, at least they found Doctor Strange on the planet below, so their mission can still go ahead. Just fire those torpedoes and head home, mateys. Probably don't want to hang around in Klingon space a second longer than you absolutely need to. But Kirk's like, nah, it'll be fine. So he heads down to the planet to lay the smackdown on Strange in person. Remember in Wrath of Khan, how Kirk and Khan never actually had a scene together and all their interactions were done via a view screen? Because, you know, their conflict was compelling enough by itself that they didn't have to pad it out with a stupid fight scene. No, never mind. So they go down and Uhura goes with them and balderdash, I need to have another rant. Why do these new movies insist on shoehorning Uhura into every possible scene and situation now? Uhura's a communications officer. She was never that important in the original movies. She never really got involved in dangerous away missions and major plot lines. She was good at her job, but her job meant being on the bridge and doing communications stuff. And that was it. Now it seems like she's always hanging around where she isn't wanted, always having some argument with Spock over their totally forced relationship, or back-talking Kirk when he's supposed to be her superior officer. Does the concept of rank or chain of command mean anything to these morons? McCoy was always supposed to be the third member of the Holy Trinity back in the day, and it wasn't done just for shits and giggles. He was a major thematic counterpoint to Spock. McCoy represented passion and emotion. He was the moral center of the trio, whereas Spock was the logical and pragmatic one. Spock saw the solution to a problem more clearly because he wasn't influenced by empathy and compassion, but McCoy better understood the implications and the human cost of that solution. As a result, Kirk was the well-balanced, well-rounded individual, positioned between these two extremes. A guy who would listen to both points of view before making his decisions. That was classic Star Trek at its best. It was smart, it was interesting, it encouraged you to see a situation from different points of view, and it led to some great character moments when the three of them faced a difficult problem. But now I sense a great disturbance in the Force. The equation's been unbalanced. McCoy's been pushed into the periphery by the new movies, and Uhura's been awkwardly inserted into his place. Instead of passion and emotion versus cold logic and rationality, now we have to endure Spock and Uhura's fucking tedious interpersonal bullshit every 5 minutes. It's forced, it's dumb, it's irrelevant. But, you know, as long as we can force that precious representation into everything, who cares, right? Fuck off, film. Anyway, our intrepid gang gets ambushed by some really weird looking Klingons, but then Strange appears and he saves them. Then Newkirk loses his shit and he tries to knock Strange out, but Strange is like, nah, it'll be fine, son. But then he finds out about the secret bullshit torpedoes on the Enterprise, and it makes him scared, so he surrenders and they take him to the brig. But that's when he spills the beans about what's really happening. Are you ready for this? His real name isn't Doctor Strange or John Harrison. It's actually...
Khan.
I love how he says it as if any of the characters present should have any clue who that is. But we do, dear viewer, because we're fans of Star Trek, and this movie is trying to provide service to us in the vain hopes we'll like it more. Remember Khan, everyone? Remember how he used to be an interesting and compelling antagonist? Remember how he used to look and act and talk completely different from Dirk Benedict Bundersnatch here? Fuck off, film. So Khan tells them to open up one of the torpedoes, and they do, and wouldn't you know it, it's got a frozen human body inside, as well as a warhead. Wait, what the fuck? So, like, these torpedoes were retrofitted to act as cryo chambers, as well as being long-range weapons? How? That must mean 90% of their internal space is completely useless and unnecessary under normal circumstances. So why design them this way, except to act as a stupid plot device in a dumb space action movie? I feel like I'm losing IQ points by the second here, and not just because of the obscene amount of alcohol I've consumed. Now you might be wondering what all these different events have to do with each other, and who this intriguing Khan fellow actually is. Well, Khan was the leader of a race of genetically engineered superhumans created on Earth in the 21st century. He tried to take over the world, but it all went wrong and he escaped aboard a ship with his followers and went into cryogenic sleep. Then Robocop found him a few centuries later. That was convenient, and enlisted his help to build advanced new weapons for the Federation. But then Khan rebelled and ran away, and now Robocop wants a more militarized, aggressive Starfleet to take over the galaxy. So he sent the Enterprise to Kronos with the bullshit torpedoes to blow up Khan and trigger a war with the Klingons. Khan also gives them the coordinates to the secret base, where Robocop's been building his super weapons, and they send Shaun of the Dead to sneak in and infiltrate the place, and he totally does it without any difficulty. What the actual fuck mothering Christ is going on here? This entire backstory makes about as much sense as the plot for Terminator Dark Fate. Why would you use Khan of all people to design your new super weapon? Khan was never a scientist or an engineer, he was a dictator. Yeah, he was smart and cunning, but his life was focused on leadership and conquest, not science and engineering. And even if Khan was an expert in all this stuff, wouldn't all his knowledge be like 200 years out of date? How the hell was he supposed to help you out in the 23rd century? It would be like reanimating Hitler and asking him to design a new iPhone for you. In fact, the Wrath of Khan even makes a point of showing Khan's lack of experience in space battles when Kirk uses his superior knowledge to turn the tables on him. It's smart and it makes sense, unlike anything in this piece of shit movie. So let's take a moment to break down Robocop's plan, shall we? So he defrosts a 200-year-old dictator and asks him to design a new super powerful starship for him, and he keeps the rest of Khan's crew as hostages to make him cooperate. But then Khan gets bored and he escapes and blows up Starfleet headquarters. So Robocop sends the Enterprise to the Klingons' homeworld with Khan's people inside fucking photon torpedoes. How was this plan ever supposed to work? Did he really think someone like Kirk wouldn't question orders like this? The only way the frozen bodies could even come into play is if Kirk came into direct contact with Khan without killing him there and then and telling him about the torpedoes he'd been given. And was the Khan in on this plan? Did he know what Robocop was planning to do? If not, then why did he go to Kronos of all places? There are literally thousands of planets he could have travelled to and completely disappeared. If he knew Robocop was going to use his people as leverage, why not just surrender straight away? What does he actually gain by blowing up secret facilities and assassinating Starfleet personnel, except to paint a massive target on his back? And if Khan knows the location of the secret weapons facility where the new ship's being built, why doesn't he just go there himself and steal it? Or threaten to expose the entire project to the whole Federation? And if Robocop knows that Khan knows where the weapons facility is hidden, wouldn't it make sense to move it so he can't find it? Fuck off, film. So they decide to go back to Earth to report this all to Starfleet, but then Robocop intercepts them with his super ship, which totally owns the Enterprise in battle, because that's basically what happens in every one of these movies. Honestly, this ship is like the Hawkeye of Starfleet. So Robocop demands that they hand over John Harrison.
John Harrison.
Jesus, this guy slurs his words worse than me, and I only have 60% of my brain cells still functioning. Anyway, Robocop is all set to blow up the Enterprise, but Shaun of the Dead sabotages his ship long enough for Kirk and Khan to space jump over. Shame you didn't do that before he crippled the Enterprise, eh, Shaun?
Prick.
So they make it to the bridge, but then Khan kills Robocop and betrays them all so he can take command of the super ship. Oh no, never saw this one coming. Who would have thought this ruthless, genetically engineered superhuman would be willing to kill people once they served their purpose? So Khan strikes a bargain with Spock to hand over the rest of his frozen crew in the bullshit torpedoes in exchange for Kirk and the others. So he does, and they trade hostages, but Spock armed the torpedoes and they blow up inside Khan's ship. What a spiffing job, old boy. Well done. Anyway, both ships have been damaged and disabled, and they start to fall into the Earth's atmosphere. The only way to save the Enterprise is to get the warp core back online by kicking it. Because that's how complex precision engineered futuristic technology works, right? Fuck off, film. Remember when Spock sacrificed himself in Wrath of Khan to fix the warp core and save the Enterprise before the Genesis device exploded and killed them all? Remember how it was a really poignant and emotional scene when he and Kirk said their goodbyes and the camera slowly panned out on a devastated Kirk silently slumped next to his friend's body? Remember how the scene worked so well because it was built on the long history between these two characters and the amazing chemistry between the actors playing them. Never mind. So Kirk dies and Khan's ship crashes into San Francisco, killing and injuring tens of thousands of innocent people. Then Spock goes after him and they have a fight and fucking Uhura shows up to save the day, because we literally can't have anything significant happen in these movies without Uhura being involved. Fuck off, film. Remember a few seconds ago how Kirk died to save his ship and crew? Well, it's okay because Khan's blood is magical and it can bring people back to life. So he wakes up and everything's back to normal and the Enterprise goes off for another exciting adventure like nothing happened. And that's the plot of Into Darkness. What a fucking unmitigated disaster this movie is. I mean, I know they say if you're gonna steal from the best, and Wrath of Khan is about as good as it's gonna get as far as Star Trek goes, but the problem is that people are inevitably gonna compare what you did with what you stole it from, and really all that does is shine a giant spotlight on how truly awful your product is. Not to mention tarnishing the original by associating it with the turd you produced. Everything that made Wrath of Khan the pinnacle of Star Trek storytelling is dumbed down, simplified, and bastardized beyond all recognition here. The central storyline and conflict of Wrath of Khan worked well because it was all earned. It was built on existing relationships and characters with long personal histories. We felt Kirk's boredom and frustration with his unsatisfying desk job, and his sense of wonder and excitement at being back on the bridge of his old ship. We felt his angst and fear of growing old as middle age set in. We felt the rage and desire for revenge burning away inside Khan, and his satisfaction when he finally got to unleash death and destruction against Kirk. The conflict between these two men was a carefully choreographed battle of wits and resourcefulness. Kirk's superior knowledge and experience versus Khan's superior intellect. Each man pressed his advantage to the fullest, each scored brief victories against the other, but ultimately Khan's ego and his desire for revenge proved to be his undoing. Whereas with Into Darkness, all we got was... It's like the writers were given a 10-second summary of Wrath of Khan and they just went with it, having no idea who these characters actually are, what their personal history was, or the deeper themes the movie addressed. None of it makes a lick of fucking sense. Spock's death in Wrath of Khan was crushing and poignant, especially when the movie's ending suggested it might well be permanent, and it served a real dramatic purpose that tied perfectly into Kirk's character development. He was a man used to winning, to always finding a way out, but not this time. Spock's death forced him to confront his own mortality, and it gave him fresh perspective on life, helping to remind him that it was a precious gift that shouldn't be taken for granted. But with Into Darkness, Kirk dies and the only impact is that Spock gets angry and tries to kill Khan, and it means nothing because he gets resurrected like 5 minutes later, giving the entire sequence all the impact of a left hook from Stephen Hawking. And I guess that's my big takeaway for this entire movie. Nothing in it means anything because no thought has been put into any of it. Into Darkness represents the very worst tendencies of New Trek. It's dumb, overblown, pretentious, unimaginative, and worst of all, it tries to take iconic scenes and character beats from the far superior original, strip them of context and meaning, and shoehorn them into its bullshit, convoluted excuse for a plot. And it just makes me feel like... And that's all I have for today. Go away now.